Hello, my card making friends. I'm Tricia at Club Scrap. This is the Sassy Card Kit Workshop. I hope you're ready for some belly laughs. We're gonna have a great time putting these cards together. Let's get started. I've got a printed copy of my instructions here and my entire Sassy Card Kit. As usual, we will take all of the ribbon and other embellishments that came in the box, and I'm just gonna set those aside. And let's take the paper that came in the kit and sort it into the order we'll be trimming it. Of course, I've got my Fisker's guillotine trimmer here, and I have my accordion pocket file so that we can stay organized. I'll just take the lip of this and put it underneath my trimmer base. If you don't have that, don't let that keep you from making the cards with me today. Just maintain 4 separate piles and maybe use a Post-it note to label them A, B, C, and D. All right, let's take one sheet of the bright blue from your kit. That's this one. It's obviously really bright. And then we're gonna go to red and then gray. Now you're gonna think there's 2 shades of gray. Which one is it? Well, one is way more gray than the other. So go with that deeper gray. And you'll notice there's a texture on the deep gray. Put that texture side face down. And then we're gonna go with the dusty blue. We honestly really debated quite a bit over what to call this paper in this collection, but we're calling it dusty blue. Hope that works for you. Next, we're gonna find all those papers again. So go back to the bright blue, the red, the gray, texture side down, the dusty blue, then we'll trim the red print, and then we'll trim the blue print. Now, normally we usually have 2 each of one print, but we just couldn't decide on which design to use, so we included 1 of each. And while supplies last, you can buy extra sheets of these papers if you happen to like the patterns. So this is the blueprint. Then we'll take the Cutapart that has the most objects on it. The upper left says, recent studies suggest that people get happier as they get older. And then we have the other one with the larger objects. Put that face down, both of those face down. And that should be all the paper that you have in your kit. Flip the whole batch over to that bright blue side and let's get trimming. As far as situational placement, I do like to put the papers to my left, the trimmer right in front of me, and then my instructions on my right. Seems to work pretty well. And before we can trim this blue sheet of paper, I need to check the grain direction. If you're new here, just make sure you grab the paper by the middle of an edge and give it a little wiggle, and like take note of how the paper acts, and then go to the middle of a neighboring edge and see how much more stiff this paper is in this direction. It's like doesn't want to bend at all, and this way it really does want to bend. So make sure the paper is put into your trimmer so it bends easily from the top to the bottom. And then let's take the red, since we can trim both of these papers at the same time, and check for your bendy direction as well, making sure it bends easily from the top to the bottom of the trimmer. Again, if you're new, and I know those of you who've been around forever are like, yeah, I know, get on with it. Just double check step 1, and you'll see an arrow that tells you the direction the paper should bend most easily. The grain is actually running the opposite direction of the arrow, but let's not worry about that. I just want to make sure you know how that paper goes in. The reason for this is later on we're going to be folding these card bases, and I want the folding to be easier, especially because this is a heavier weight paper. So stack those 2 pieces neatly together, and we're going to trim at 11 1/4. So to find 11 1/4, make sure you're looking not at the centimeters, but at the inches. We're going inches. And then when I say like 1/4, go to the left of that whole number 1 column. So you see all these columns here? So 11 1/4. So there's 11. Go left 1 column. That's 11 1/4. The most common mistake people make is going to the right instead of the left. Before you slice, if you're using this beautiful trimmer here, make sure you push down firmly on this clear bar to keep the paper from wiggling around, and allow the paper to stay where it landed. Then let's slide the same sheet down to 7. Stabilize firmly again. Now take the piece of paper in your trimmer right now and rotate it so it's horizontal. Trim at 11 3/4. Stabilize even for this. And then again at 10. All right, so now what you have in your trimmer here is 2 card bases. I'm not going to put these in my pockets yet because I want to score them first, so I'm just going to set them aside in a separate pile of things that need to be scored or folded. And then you have this narrow strip that fell from the end. we're gonna trim this at 2 numbers, okay? The first number is 6 3/4. So 6 plus 1, 2, 3/4. That's 3 columns left. Slice and then move down to 4. Now, if you're really, really new and you're not used to measuring, you can go into your YouTube playback settings, hit the gear button, choose playback speed, and put 0.75. That will really, really slow me down. All right, so here you've got these smaller strips and these really small strips. Both of them go in pocket A, apple. And then you've got some really small strips left over. The longer ones, we're actually going to use them in card set C, Charlie. So put those in C, and then these, I mean, I feel pretty comfortable putting them in the circular file. Hope you do too. All right, this next longer piece, we don't even need to trim it. Just set it aside to be scored. And we now have just this narrow piece, just because I could rescue from the scrap pile. We're going to trim this at 7. So just find 7, push down on the clear bar to keep that paper from moving, and put this in pocket C, Charlie. And the smaller strips I did not use. Guess what? We get to do that one more time. All of those cuts. Okay, so take the gray, dark gray here, and check your grain. I'm going to put the wiggly side, bending easily top to bottom. And then this dusty blue is like a 100-pound cover weight. It's really heavy. So you might want to push in a little bit. Check for the side that gives you the least resistance, but they're both going to be pretty firm. This one definitely is least resistant. Stack them neatly together, and we'll do this one more time. 11 1/4, 11 plus 1 column to the left. Stabilize. And 7. Stabilize again. Rotate. Trim at 11 3/4, so it's 11 plus 1, 2, 3 to the left. And then 10. Nice whole number. And these 2 large pieces here are more card bases to be set aside. Then you have this strip. We'll trim at 6 3/4. So again, finding 6, 1, 2, 3. And 4. Both of the pieces you created, the longer ones and the shorter ones, go in pocket A, alpha. And then you have these long, narrow strips. Those go in C, Charlie. And the 2 really tiny pieces you can get rid of. Then you have this 12-inch wider piece here. That's going to be a pair of card bases that need to be scored. And your final strip can be trimmed at 7. Stabilize. Put the 7-inch piece in pocket C, Charlie, and get rid of the scraps. Now we're moving on to a new cutting map, okay? So 4 we did one way. We're going to do 4 more another way. That's the cool part about these formulas. And once you master these card structures, if you happen to have a stash of paper at home, I've got good news for you. You can sub it out, put your paper into these spots, and make more cards with these cool structures, okay? Now, this time, we need the paper to dip or bend easily going from the left to the right. And again, that is indicated by the arrow in the diagram for step 2. So left to right, that's bright blue. And then we'll grab the red. Wants to go this way. All right. Really want you to follow me carefully, cut by cut on this. It's just kind of a bit of a weird map, but if you do it step by step, I mean, you can do anything step by step, right? Apparently, you can even land a plane if you've never flown before. The pilot becomes incapacitated. The ground control tower talks a woman through how to land the plane, and she's never flown before. You can do this, okay? Step by step. All right, 7 3/4. So 7, 1, 2, 3 to the left. 7 3/4. We'll rotate this paper in the trimmer base and cut at 9 and 4 1/2. Gather up the pieces in the trimmer base and the pieces that just fell. They should be the same size. Place them in the pile to be scored. Then you have this strip right here, the one that just fell. We're going to trim that one at 6 inches. Place this piece in the pile to be scored, And the little pieces that fell off the end. Okay, so this, I was gonna have you put it in pocket C, but since you're with me, I'm gonna have you take a little trim on this so that we don't have to get our trimmer out again. And let's just trim this to 2 3/8. So I'm putting it in horizontally, 2, 2 1/4, and the halfway between 2 1/4 and 2 1/2 is 2 3/8. Then rotate it so it's vertical and trim it 1 3/8. So 1, 1 1/4, halfway between 1 1/4 and 1 1/2 is 1 3/8. Let me just show you why, because check this out. It's gonna fit right in here. And then I've got a Cutapart that's gonna nest right on top of it. And it wouldn't work if I trimmed it to the nearest 1/4 inch. I had to go down to 1/8. All of that's optional, but kind of fun when you think about it. I'm gonna put this in pocket C now. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. Pick up the next piece to your right. It should just be this 12-inch piece. And let's trim at 11 1/2 and 5 1/4. Then take the 5 1/4 inch piece that's in the trimmer right now, turn it so it's vertical, and cut at 4. Place this in pocket B, Bravo, the larger panel that fell in pocket C, Charlie, and the remaining pieces are scraps. We get to do that again. Make sure your grain direction of the paper dips easily left to right. Well, here we go. Trim at 7 3/4. Rotate and trim at 9 and 4 1/2. The pieces in your trimmer base plus the ones that just fell should be the same. Those go to be scored. And then you have this rectangle. We're going to trim that at 6 inches. Set this piece aside to be scored, and then you have this little rectangle. So we'll trim it horizontally at 2 3/8. That's halfway between 2 1/4 and 2 1/2. And 1 3/8. That's halfway between 1 1/4 and 1 1/2. And once again, this little guy can go in pocket C. That is the advantage of you watching the video, because if you didn't, you just have to find that information in the instructions. It is kind of written there, but again, I just didn't want to complicate things too much in this diagram here and freak people out, because that's never good. Okay, now we have this long piece. We're going to trim at 11 1/2, 5 1/4. Rotate the 5 1/4 and trim it vertically now at 4 inches. Place this piece in pocket B, Bravo, and the larger panel in C, Charlie, and you can get rid of your scraps. Now we're moving on to this red print, and it really doesn't have a direction, right? So we can just trim it any way we want, and we don't have to worry about grain direction because none of these pieces will be folded or scored. We'll trim at 8 1/2. So it's halfway between 8 and 9. And 5. Rotate this 5-inch piece and trim at 11 1/4. 7 1/2. 3 3/4. Gather the 3 pieces that are the same and place them in pocket B, Bravo. And there should be a little scrap that fell from the end we're not using. And then the next 2 pieces, I'm going to put them back to back. So white side to white side. And then trim at 6 inches. And the reason we do that is so that the paper doesn't slide around as easily. And the printed side tends to be more slippery. So put those 4 panels in pocket C, Charlie. And grab the next patterned paper, here the blue pattern. And again, the direction doesn't matter. We don't have to fold this. So we'll trim at 8 and 4. So now you made 3 4-inch strips, right? Take 2 of the strips and put them back to back again. And we'll cut at 10 1/2, both at the same time. And 5 1/4. Gather up the 4 pieces and face them the right direction again, and place them in pocket A, apple. Now you have a couple of smaller scraps that fell from the end. Those we're not using. Take the remaining 4 by 12 and cut at 10 1/4, 8 1/2, 6 3/4, and 5. Rotate the 5-inch piece so it's vertical and trim at 3 3/4. This panel goes in pocket B, bravo, and then you'll have a small scrap. You can get rid of that. And you've got these 4 remaining rectangles for pocket A, alpha. Now we've arrived at our Cutaparts. Now with this Cutapart, you're gonna notice some writing on the outer edges. It says remove paper outside of corner cutting guides. I'm gonna rotate my paper like this. And when the paper is 12 1/4 inches square, you can't see the outside edge of this stainless steel blade when it's in the trimmer. It's like too big. So when I make my first cut, I'm gonna go shy of that corner guide just by a little bit. Oh, I pretty much nailed it. And then I'm gonna go rotate, and now this time I really can see the bottom edge of this blade here in the corner, which is really nice for just lining up that guide mark. And then when I rotate this time, I can pretty much go with the 12, or I can look to the right and just make sure. And then when I rotate one more time, I'm gonna cut at 12, and that's gonna get me nicely started. That mark is a little bit hard to see because of the little border that Jacqueline added to that spot. So it's almost the same color as the mark. So use the other 3 edges to kind of determine where you trim. The goal is to have a 12 by 12 at the end. Now we can put this in the trimmer again with the stripies on the right, and we'll cut at 11 1/4, 10 1/4, 9, 7 1/2, and 4 1/4. Rotate the 4 1/4 inch piece so it's horizontal and trim at 9, 6, and 3. Gather those 4 pieces that are the same for pocket B, bravo. Next, grab this strip that has It's All About the Laugh, put that on the right, and we'll trim at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. And gather all 4 pieces that are the same for pocket A, alpha. This is just an extra piece, and Jacqueline put It's All About the Laugh on there. You can use it anywhere you wish. And now pick up the next strip, and it has ha 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 ha. Put that on the right and cut at 10, 7 1/2, 5, 2 1/2. And even for this, just push your finger down on the clear bar. Pile all those in pocket A, and the ha 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 is to be used at your discretion. Finally, cross your legs before reading Sassy Cards. Follow me for more tips. That should be on your right. We'll cut at 9, 6 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/4. And these little sentiments are going to be the ones that are matted with those little mats we made earlier. And all 4 of these go in pocket C, Charlie, and then this is an extra. Now we have one more strip. 2 Sassy for My Own Good should be on your right, and we'll go at 8 1/2 and 4 1/4. Both of those 4 1/4 inch pieces have the word pull, and that's for our fun pop-up card in set B, bravo. You have one last simple sheet to trim, but first we have to remove that outer perimeter. Oh, forgot about my scrap. I can set that aside. Then I'll remove using that guideline just to get rid of that excess. we have found that when we have our paper trimmed to that final size at the, there's always a little variance on those gigantic paper trimmers, and it's too precise for, we need to be very precise. Otherwise, it's kind of like the butterfly effect, that one little misalignment at the beginning carries through all the way to the end. Kind of like if your foundation of your house isn't straight. Never good. Okay, so place this in your trimmer with the words pull once you get that perimeter removed. If you need to, pause me. And let's cut at 11. Then 8. And 4. Rotate the 4x12 and trim at 6. These two larger pieces go in pocket C, Charlie. And then pick up the next strip, same thing, trim at 6, and place in pocket C, Charlie. And then you have these fun little squares. We will trim horizontally at 9, 6, and 3. And all 4 of these go in pocket B, bravo. The last 2 cuts of the day, 8.5 and 4 1/4 to isolate our pull tabs here. And those both go in pocket B, bravo. This is a little scrap once again. We just put artwork on the things that would have been scraps. I'm finished with my trimmer, and now I'm gonna swap this out with my score pal. Okay, I'm gonna work backwards from all of the pieces so that the piles that you have should be the order that we're tackling this, if you've been following along the whole way. Also of note, the accordion pocket file may or may not stay up on its own, but don't count on it. The little lip on here is the trimmer holds it up, it counterbalances. So after I'm finished trimming, I always place my accordion pocket file on its back. Take the small, this is a 3x6 inch piece here, and we're gonna score it 3.5 and 5.5. So 3.5 and 5.5. Now, if you're working with this particular kit and this paper, this is a very heavy sheet of paper. And if you want to make a second pass, you can. And if your tool is going off track, a little idea is that you can also have a ruler help you along the way for scoring. I just want to mention that since the paper is so heavy, and I have seen people really struggle with that. And then I'm going to take the other one, the other piece, make sure it's in the score pal with the texture side facing up. And once again, those numbers are 3.5 and 5.5. And if you just dig down a little bit further into the pile, you're going to find the red one and the bright blue one. So 3.5, 5.5. That paper's not quite as heavy. 3.5, 5.5. All 4 of these pieces go in pocket A. And then you have some pairs of, like, what do they measure? 4.5 by 7 3/4. When you place these in the score pal, make sure they're horizontal, and we'll score at 5 3/4. So 5 3/4. And if you want to make a second pass on that dusty blue, you can. Before you score at the next measurement, I want you to flip the paper from the bottom to the top. So I'm just going to grab it like this. There's my bottom, bring it top. And then I will score again at 6.5. We're going to do this a bunch of times because each card that we're going to make has 2 of these. So again, with the texture side facing up, our first score is at 5 3/4. Flip it bottom to top, 6.5. You will memorize this before the day is done. 5 3/4 on the next one. Flip, 6.5. Again, 5 3/4 on the gray with the texture side up, 6.5 after the flip. Now to the red, 5 3/4, flip, 6.5. 5 3/4, flip, 6.5. I got 2 there. Make sure you just grab one. 5 3/4, flip, 6.5. 5 3/4, flip, 6.5. I know I said that 8 times. Okay, now I'm going to sort them so the colors are together, and we'll move on to the next one after we place this in pocket B. Next, I'm going to find all 4 of these 12-inch narrow pieces, and we have a lot of numbers, but they're easy to remember, and you're going to love how these turn out. So it's going to be every 2 inches starting at 5.5. So 5.5, 7.5, 9.5, 11.5. That's every 2 inches, okay? And you're going to have that really narrow one on the end. That's by design. Let's bring in the gray, texture side up, 5.5, 7.5, 9.5, 11.5. Keep going to the red now. 5.5, 7.5, 9.5, 11.5. And one more with the blue. 5.5, 7.5, 9.5, 11.5. Very good. All of these go into the folder for pocket A, alpha. And all that's left now are these 7x10s. These are going to be nice, simple, single fold. We'll be ready for them by then. And we're going to score at 5. Again, if your tool keeps going off track because of the heavy paper, just stabilize the tip of your scoring device with the ruler. And we'll go to the gray with the texture side up. Then the red at 5 inches. And the blue, bright blue at 5. And all of these pieces get placed in pocket C, Charlie. Okay, we are ready to make some cards. I'll begin by taking everything out of pocket A, and there's a lot of stuff in there. What I find really helps the process is if I sort it out a little bit into piles of like items. So I've got my large card bases. I've got more scored pieces that go with them. I've got some 4 like long narrow pieces and 4 really short narrow pieces. I've got some additional prints. We've got some larger sentiments and some smaller sentiments. Now, if I do it this way, then it's just easier to deal everything out. And that's kind of what I call this process, is the deal. Okay, so as far as card bases, let's just stick with the order that they fall in the instructions so they can make sense of it. I'm going to start with red, then this dusty blue color. Maybe if I go this way, I'll go red, dusty blue, gray, and bright blue. Each one of these cards will then get one of the larger printed panels. And as long as we're adding the printed panels, let's still distribute the smaller one too. Now I'm going to take this smaller scored piece, the bright blue will go here, then red, dusty blue, and gray. Then the larger strip, bright blue, red, and dusty blue. You can substitute any of these anytime you wish. It's just a nice way to get the colors distributed. So now the missing color, the dusty blue, the gray, the bright blue, and the red. And now our sentiments. It turns out that when asked who your favorite child is, you're supposed to pick one of your own. And that goes with, I know that now. Then the 3 hardest things to say. And that goes with Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce. Then here is a joke for all you mind readers out there. This space intentionally left blank. And when I was your age, I had to walk 10 feet through shag carpet to change the channel. Happy birthday, you young thing. These are all so much fun, you have to admit. And we, as a staff, spent a lot of time researching all these fun sentiments. I just have you know. Now I'm going to dump all of these pieces for this card set, this last one, into an envelope, the smallest of the smallest 4 envelopes in your kit. And the same for the third card. The reason I'm doing this is because we're just going to assemble one card together. Then you can either pause me and do the rest, or get a prototype of each, and then you have everything you need in the bag to kind of finish the job, right? Okay, so let's make this red one together. The first thing we need to do is fold on these score lines. I'll grab my bone folder. And the rule is that you have to look for the bump of the score line, and that's what goes on the inside of the fold. So right here, there's a bump. If you don't find a bump, flip the paper over, and I'm just gonna fold on that. And then here's another bump, so I'll fold on that. And then here's another bump, I'll fold on that. And every time I fold, I make sure that the card is level, that it's not like folding crooked or anything. And there's one more bump, so I'm gonna fold on that. If I look at this skinny piece, it also has 2 score lines. Find the bump and bury it on both of those as well. Okay. And one of the first things I want you to do is find this printed panel and your satin blue ribbon from the kit. I'll take my scissors that is I've set aside just for use with ribbon, and I'm going to cut 2 lengths, both of them a little wider than the panel itself. Take one of the lengths and fold it in half. I'll kind of just split the ends a little bit like this, and I'm going to temporarily line up this ribbon so that the center fold of the ribbon is at the top center of the card. And then I'm going to wrap the ends around to the back. And I'm going to secure them there with tape. Now I generally put my tape in a little dispenser like this, a sand-filled dispenser, because then I have a 4th hand or 3rd hand that holds it while I dispense. And now I have this weird winging loop. Now ribbon has a grain too, by the way, so as I fold this in half, I make sure I'm folding it with the grain, and I'll thread this through the loop. And then I'm going to tug the loop while I support it from the left here. I'll even out those ends a little bit. And kind of look how I want the ribbon to lay nice and flat. Now, what I like about this type of double looped bow is that it doesn't have a big knot. Like if I'm making a regular bow, it's not as flat as this. And so for sending a card, that is not a big problem. It's those big giant bows that can sometimes cause problems. So I love the look of this. And now that I have this ready to go, I can add it to its appropriate home. Now take your red card base and place the largest non-scored area at the top with all of those other scored areas as valley folds beneath it. By valley fold, I mean it goes in like a valley, okay? That's the position of the card, how we want it. Then I'm gonna take this piece and I will add my adhesive and center it within this large scored area. It should fit in there perfectly if everything went according to plan. Now, we need to attach this 1/2-inch tab to the back wall of the card so that the card will form this shape when it's on display, and it will also lay flat when it's being mailed, okay? So the way we're gonna do this is fold the card on its 2nd score. So this is the first one, here's the 2nd score, fold it. And now you can see this little scored area here, and I'm going to apply some bookbinding glue to that area, or you could use score tape. If you're going to use your regular 2-way adhesive, make sure it's a quality stronger adhesive. And then I'm just going to fold up on the middle fold, and that's going to put that tab right where it needs to be. So it's best to do this when the card is laying flat, rather than trying to aim it and put it where it's supposed to be, and then it might be a little off, and then the card doesn't close properly. So now that I have that secured, that little tab, hopefully you can see that, it will close like it's supposed to, and it will display like it's supposed to in a perfect square. At this point, we can add our 2 other panels. So I decided to put this printed panel, or this plain panel here, and the printed there. If you would like to swap it, you could, but I kind of liked this. It's your own card, do what you want. So I can put adhesive on both of these panels because I know that I'm ready to add them to the card. So the gray I'm going to put to this scored area that's closest to the tab. You don't want it to be here, it'll be on the bottom of the card. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be hidden. And this one's going to go on the front of that box shape. But again, I want to lay it down onto the card when it's flat. It's just so much easier to aim and get everything all lined up nicely. So we got this card, and we're just going to put some counterbalance on this and to help it stay a little bit better. Before we do that, I'm gonna, I think, decorate my my counterbalance piece. So this blue piece has a larger scored area, just happen to have a sentiment that fits right into that space. I mean, really, how easy could this be? So I'll put that here, being mindful that the tab is now at the top. Free edge is down here. Then the phrase that says, "I know that now," that can go on the mat because I had I mean, I wouldn't have had to make the mat, but I had the paper left over from trimming. So I'm like, oh, I think I can make that fit right there. And here it is. Oh, so cute. Okay. Now at this point, I need to attach this, just the bottom half of this area, to the front of my box, okay? Again, it's easier to do this when it's flat. So let me show you how I do this. So I'm just gonna lay this down and put this right next to it. And if you care about things being centered, you could grab your 2x8, your 3x14, or your 8x8 grid ruler and lay it along the edge, bottom edge of your card. And the reason I have a position like this is just because it's more comfortable. The card is sideways. And my measurement on this edge and this edge reads 2 1/8. So 2 + 1 cube. And then my measurement when this is centered is 1.5 and 1.5. So that's kind of what I'm after. So for the time being, I need to put glue on this. I'm going to flip it over, and the glue should not surpass that score line. Otherwise, you're going to make yourself a really lumpy postcard, okay? We don't want that. So I'm going to get centered up again, and it was 1.5. Perfect. Now it's right where it needs to be centered. The last thing that we need to do while it's laying flat like this is get this tab glued to the back wall of the card. That's easy. I'm just going to leave it right where it was. I'll add some squiggles of my bookbinding glue. And the reason I'm using this is it does give me a little bit of adjustment time because it's wet glue, and the area is kind of small where I'm applying it, and it's nice and permanent, okay? So that's going to really work well for us in this situation, and dries quickly too. So now our box card stands up really nice, and it also folds perfectly flat for mailing. How cool is that? If you want, then you can add, your kit came with like these bonus little star goodies. These are so cute. So choosing goodies for this kit was really hard because we don't have a central theme. The theme was basically happiness, funny, I don't know. So I just used really general, broad goodie items for this, and these stars came in perfectly handy. They're just really fun. So I'm adding bookbinding glue to the back of the sequin, and then I'll add it to this area here, and then I'll add one more to the top upper portion of the card. This bookbinding glue is good for lots and lots of different surfaces. I'm going to tuck this, maybe the hanging hole of the sequin, I'm going to tuck it behind the ribbon. Cute. There you go. There's your first card. Isn't that fun? Don't forget to pick one of your own. You know, you really should say you don't have any favorites. They're all your favorites. Okay? Just so you know. Okay, so remember now, all the other cards in this set go together the same way. I'll quick show you. Here we've got the hardest 3 things to say. And here we have a joke. Here is a joke for all you mind readers. This space intentionally left blank. And when I was your age, I had to walk 10 feet through shag carpet to change the channel. That was me. Our shag carpet was a wonderful shade of red. Red shag carpet. Oh, I love these cards. Okay, so that is your first set. We're moving right along to set B, and you're gonna love this pop-up card. The first thing I'll do here is, once again, empty the contents of pocket B, and I hope you love my organizational system. It's been working for me for years, and it keeps us from having just piles or nonsensical sets of things laying everywhere. Came up with the idea when I just got so frustrated trying to teach classes and help my students stay organized, because we have all these pieces that we trim all at once. It saves us a lot of time, but not if we can't find anything, right? So I've got everything sorted by size while I chatted with you here, and I'm going to begin by distributing the card bases. We'll start with red. So find the 2 red scored pieces, and then we'll go with the gray. I'm going to make sure they're right side up. Then we've got our bright blue, then we have our dusty blue. Now we'll distribute some plain colored panels. So dusty blue, bright blue, red, and dark gray. Then we have our printed panels. So we'll go red print, blue print. Red print is at the end. Now our front phrases here, we've got, let's get this party started. What inspires me to get out of bed every morning? Please be patient with me, and recent studies. Then the innies, because I would really like to be in bed by 10. My bladder mostly. I'm from the 1900s, and you must be ecstatic. Lastly, we have our little pull directions. So I went with the gray here. You can go any color you want. Red, blue, and dark gray. So that was the dusty blue. This is the dark gray. Once again, I'm going to take now the medium-sized envelopes provided in the kit, and I will slide these in. If you want, you could add one of the clips, one of those little, they look like geographical markers, a clip, and a smiley charm if you plan to decorate the cards as I've spec'd out. It's totally up to you, as always. And then I'm going to put these in another envelope with another clip and another smiley guy. And this is the last one we'll put in the envelope. And then the other one we are going to make together, and you're going to be amazed at how this pop-up functions. It's so great. I've got it really well planned for you. Let's begin by folding our card base according to the score lines. And this is what I like about making sure my students understand the general rule about score lines. So bury the bump, right? So here's the bump. I'm going to put it inside the fold, which then reveals another bump that I'm going to fold back on. So by following these rules, when we're scoring, I can say score, flip, score. And the flip is what will direct us later on to make this little gusset like this little valley or mountain fold. This is a valley, this is a mountain, right? So it really helps clarify, later on what's to be done. So I'm folding on that and then buried this bump here. And I've got two pieces that look exactly the same, okay? They're both scored the same. They both look the same. That's what we want. Then I also have this little guy. Now, if you look at this, I want you to find the lower right corner. And you see how we have this cute little triangle? That's a design purpose, okay? The triangle on the lower right corner, I want you to just put a ruler or something, a straight edge up against it, to the edge of the dark gray color. And I want you to just fold up. And then if you want to come in with your bone folder and then just fold it back like this, okay? There. Not so hard. Now I want you to take one of your horizontal folded pieces, make sure that the valley and the mountain fold are positioned on your right. Take this piece and place it here so that the triangle is at the top right and the text reads sideways. Place it so that it's right up against the edge of this gusset, and it's about 1/4 of an inch from the top. So if you want, you can even put your ruler here. The first solid line is 1/4 inch. You just want it about 1/4 inch. You could eyeball this totally. You don't have to measure it, but that is 1/4 inch and no less than that, okay? Now, here I have this little triangle that's folded. I'm going to take my bookbinding glue, and the reason, again, I'm using this glue is because it gives me a little bit of working room, and it's going to be very strong. Most regular two-way adhesives won't be ideal. Okay, so this is shoved right up against the fold. Now I'm going to close this gusset. I'm going to rest this 1/2 inch area or 3/4 inch area. I think I don't know what size it is. It is 3/4. I'm going to rest that right on top of the triangle that has the glue on it to trap that triangle between the gusset and the back of the card, okay? Good, it seems to be quite secure. That's what we want. Now the second piece, we want it to be like a mirror. We want it to flip over. So I'm going to flip it so that you have a mountain and a valley to your left, okay? And you still have this happening to your right. I'm going to put glue here on this little flap and place this on top of it and lining up on the top, right, and bottom edges. So let's do that. Glue. And you could use your adhesive for this too, but the glue works so well. And again, why I like it is because if I don't line it up on the first shot, I can move it because it's a wet product for the moment. So now lay that right on top. So you're sandwiching your sentiment right in between the two layers, and I'm going to line these ends up, and you can see how nice it is that I can move them to get them lined up nicely. Just give that a little moment. And then I want you to take the whole thing, the whole card, and just flip it, okay? There's my little thing. It's down over here now. So we're going to repeat that exact same thing. So I'm going to put adhesive on this flap. And bring this down, this edge here, right on top of that flap. And if I just lay everything flat, it should be lined up beautifully. Now you need to flip it back over and you need to look for your little square that's sandwiched in there. If you pull out, it should start to pop up. I like to give it a little bit of time, you know, but at least before I glue anything else onto this card, I want to know that that is going to come out in the right direction, okay? Before I start putting things, I might put things on the wrong side and then it's upside down and backwards. We don't want that. In fact, I even made one the wrong, I put the text going the wrong direction. Now I will nest my printed panel onto the dusty blue here, centered. And I will go ahead and nest this onto my card. There's my sentiments up there. And because I wanted the recipient to know what to do when the card arrived, you can add your pull. Right in that gusset area. I'll grab my fabric scissors and I'm just going to cut at an angle, a pretty small piece of ribbon. You don't want it to be too big or it won't fit in the envelope. And then I've got that cute little paper clip and I'm going to thread the ribbon through the top of the clip and fold it in half. I'll grab a small stapler. I'm going to staple this ribbon to the clip. That way if it's stapled, it won't be too dimensional, like it would be if I tied it onto the clip. Then all you have to do is just clip it. I like to have the big part of the clip showing. If you want to, you can grab from your tape dispenser. You can just make sure that that doesn't move. Isn't that cute? Okay, and then I will adhere this, and I'm not putting any foam adhesive or anything, just keeping it simple. And I just decided to do it at an angle. So if you're gonna do that, just make sure that the corner of this piece doesn't touch any of these other edges, forming an unwanted tangent. So let me show you. This would be no, that would be no, that would be no. So when I bring it in, I'm gonna do it so that those corners are just a little ways away from the edge of the printed paper. I hope that made sense. Next up, I will grab the smiley face charm just because these were so cute. I couldn't resist them. And I'm gonna take off some of this, a generous amount of this wax thread, and you'll have plenty left, probably enough to make a handmade book or something. And I'll add this to my smiley face. Now I'm gonna make a bow, and I love tiny bows, but I don't really have tiny fingers. So what I usually do is make a larger sized bow. And once I have it kind of tightened, see how big it is? I just pull the ends to make the loops the size I want them to be. You just have to be able to pinch the loop, tighten it again, and then you can trim your tails. Cute. And he's gonna go right there. I'll put a little bookbinding glue on him, which is what I did with mine. The bookbinding glue works great for attaching metal embellishments to your cards. I did that last because of course now we want to set this aside somewhere where it can dry, keep it away from the cats and the dogs and the kids and the husbands, okay? Because everyone's going to want to play with your card because it's really, really cute, isn't it? I knew this had to be a pop-up, and I'm really hoping you didn't let that pop-up keep you from thinking you could make these cards. So the rest of them go together the exact same way. I love this one. Please be patient with me. I'm from the 1900s. So much fun. Recent studies suggest that people get happier as they get older. You must be ecstatic. I think I should give that to my husband. It's his birthday tomorrow. That concludes the super fun pop-up card. I hope you like that one. And now we're moving on to a simple single fold for Sassy. Empty the contents of the pocket and let's do our usual routine of sorting out all of the parts and pieces so that we can easily distribute them to the card bases. So I've got my card bases, some colorful panels, some printed panels, our inner sentiments. We've got 2 sizes of strips here. And we've got these special pieces. Now, if you didn't tune into the trimming instructions, these rectangles have already been trimmed to 1 3/8 by 2 3/8. Okay, then we have our last final sentiments. If you want, go ahead and grab the white tags that were included in your kit as well. We'll be distributing those to our card bases. Let's take our card bases and fold them again. We're just gonna do all 4 so we can have enough space for everything. And remember the rule, bury the bump. Bury the bump of the score line. I'm sure there's a more technical word for it. Someone once told me they remember it because they think of the score line bump like a worm, and worms live under the ground. So you bury the worm, or the worm in the ground. I don't know. Whatever helps you remember the most basic rule of card making that I am amazed at how few people know this rule. Same thing with grain direction. I teach people every time I go anywhere about the grain direction of paper, and they're like, new to me. And I'm like, yeah, I remember it was new to me too, but I'm surprised more people don't teach this. Anyway, okay, let's start out with a horizontal, and I'm gonna give this one more little solidification of the score line. Then the bright blue, the gray, and the red. Next up, I'm going to find the colored panels. We'll put a dark gray with this, the red, bright blue, and dusty blue. A print with each one, and you'll notice right away the print isn't to scale, and I compensated for that with a narrow, really narrow strip. So let's put a bright blue narrow strip here, dusty blue here, red here, and gray here. Then we can do a white tag. The colored panel that we trimmed, you may choose to use this or not. The reason I really liked adding it was because I could add the missing color from the palette. So I know like bright blue is going to go here, dusty and gray. Then we'll add our sentiments, hard work. I heard what you did for a Klondike bar. Happy birthday. How is your summer body coming along? And let's add a strip to each of these for the inside of the card. I'm going to match the color that was in the strip on the front just to be easy. And then we can do the horizontal sentiments, but why take a chance? Call me if you think this card is disappointing and mine's looking like it has a great personality. Now we'll take our 5x7 or A7 envelopes rather, and we'll load this in here. If you want, there was a series of 4 of these really cute little crown patches in your kit. You can put a crown in there because that's what you're going to need to the final embellishment can go right in there. That way it's there right when you need it. You don't have to go hunting for your baby crowns. And now we have our fun little card we're going to make together. This is going to be so fun and easy. I did 2 verticals and 2 horizontals, but I have a little trick I need to help you for the order of assembly that's a little strange. Bear with me. I'm going to take this panel here, and I'm just going to adhere it to the gray panel so that I have equal margin at left, top, and right. And it's going to be a space beneath. And like I said, I solved it, but it does affect kind of how this gets assembled. Next, I want to prepare my tag. I'll set these pieces aside here. So the hard work never killed anyone. I think it almost killed me a few times. And I can nest this. Ooh, it's such a pretty little, you know, a tiny nest for a tiny panel. And then layer that onto the white tag. Now I'm going to find some ribbon of your choice. I'm going to use red. It's very eye-catching. Make sure I'm kind of threading this with the grain of the ribbon in mind. And what I want to find is if this were to be attached to the card centered, and this tag were to be right about here where the bottom edge of the tag is halfway between the panel and the edge of the card, that I have enough ribbon tail to wrap around the top edge of this panel. And you'll know what I mean in a moment. So basically what I want to do now is add some foam adhesive circles to the back of this piece. And I do like to cut my foam adhesive in half so I can get a little more mileage out of it. It's nice and sticky, so I can just add it. Now, I'm gonna put 2 pieces at the bottom that I'm not gonna add here quite yet. So I'm gonna remove the backing just from the top 2 pieces and the middle. And I'm just kind of gonna put this here temporarily and add this to where I think it's gonna live. And only the top 2 and the middle are gonna stick, okay? That way I know where to wrap my ribbon around to the back. That's all. All that effort just to get some ribbon wrapped around there. If you want, you could just skip that and staple ribbon. But if you want to wrap it around, you're gonna have to, you know. Now I'm gonna add this to the center of my card base. I'll grab my grid ruler. I think our reveal is gonna be 3/8. So on the ruler, I'll count 3 boxes from both edges, from the left, and 1, 2, 3 from the right. Yes, that fits nicely. Okay, now I need to add this little strip so it goes underneath the tag. Do you see what I mean? It's gonna look like that. How do I get that there? Best way to me is to add a little bit of that bookbinding glue. Yeah, this little strip really created a conundrum. An option would have been to trim it, but wouldn't it have been silly? Like I would have said, put this little strip in the trimmer and cut it. So now I have my little anchoring strip down there looking super sweet. The last step for the front of the card, well, second to last, is to remove that last 2 pieces of foam. Find your little crown. And I'll put a little adhesive on the back of that crown. Doesn't take much. I'm gonna plop that right here. So cute, isn't it? All right, now I have this narrow strip. So I will place some adhesive on that and open the card. And I'll use my ruler to just give myself a little bit of a level so that my strip doesn't go crooked. And then I can add my inner sentiment to the card. It's 1/2 inch in. Let's see. Yep. 1/2 inch from the bottom, 1/2 inch from the side. You've got your inner sentiment, you got your crown, you've got your cute little strip. Very sweet looking card, very simple. The pattern kind of does it all, right? The pattern gives it a little bit of oomph, and the colors kind of give it a little bit of mute, and then the sentiment always brings the smile. So fun. Okay, the other 3 cards in the set, I heard what you did for a Klondike bar. Same process. Call me. And again, if you want to eliminate all that, just trim the shorter strip to fit the panel itself, and you won't have to worry about that weird order of assembly. Here we have our vertical card with your little happy birthday. If you think this card is disappointing, wait till you see your presents. And I used the blue ribbon on one of them and the red ribbon on the other. I had plenty of blue ribbon going around. So fun. I hope you had a good time putting together these sassy cards. Beth was just in here. She helps fulfill your orders in the warehouse, and she's already seen all of these sentiments, maybe like a month when we were in development for the kit, and she looked at them all again. She was laughing so hard. So I hope it does the same for you. Now, one last thing before you go, can you please hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, make sure you're subscribed to our channels at YouTube so you don't miss anything. And speaking of subscribing, if you're not already a member of Club Scrap, please consider joining our family here. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. This was actually a special edition kit, so it was not sent to our members automatically. This was something that you can just choose to buy. Anyone can shop, but members do always save. I look forward to seeing you again in another fun Club Scrap workshop. Thanks for joining me.